2006 was a different ballgame altogether, right? I relocated back from the US. I don't even think we were using the terms like private market, right? When the startup ecosystem had kind of begun to emerge, there were a few initial venture capital funds that most talked about. There were a couple of large private equity guys. But the awareness about the whole ecosystem was bare minimum, we would do a session about the VCs and PEs in town, and everybody would sit in one small conference room and we would fit in. Now that we look at it, we have 400 plus fund managers across the country. Together, there's almost about $200 billion which is invested in this asset class. We have almost about 40 fund managers who have been investing for 3 funds or more. And the good part is, being a part of this journey, I have seen a lot of this evolve over a period of time. So many funds came into India and they moved out. The other ones kind of came. The same funds changed their names 3 times and so on and on. So it's been very interesting. And actually that really helps, because now today when we are diligencing over 200 plus funds, having that personal rapport, the personal relationship, to be able to ask a GP to share a lot more confidential information about themselves, right? Understanding how they made entries, how they made exits, what are the track record for each of their funds. This is super confidential information. It requires a lot of trust and belief to be able to share that. So I think it really, really helps to have that kind of a personal relationship, personal bond. Some of the initial funds that we brought in, they've all come in because they believe not just in the focus of Oister, but they also trust on us as a team. And I think that's what makes the huge difference. So I think around between 2012 to 2014, I think the buzz began to hit a very different high. The whole concept of unicorns, talking about $1 billion companies coming out of this ecosystem started to become real. People started seeing real returns. There was liquidity that poured in. Before that, it was all like, this is all paper money. These businesses are not profitable. They are not sustainable. The unit cost economics doesn't make sense, and so on and on. But I think it was around that time frame when people began to realize, no, this is for real. This is here to stay. Right? This is an asset class which will bring the disruption. This will bring the innovation. This will change the future of the country. So I think the excitement genuinely went. And then we started seeing the new breed of entrepreneurs, right? We saw entrepreneurs who were, early 20 something to people who were in 50 plus, leaving their corporate careers to kind of jump into it. The diversity of the entrepreneurial world dramatically altered. The organizations that support the ecosystem change. Initiatives from government in terms of encouraging and supporting this kind of became more and more advanced. The regulatory framework became much stronger. So I think it was a whole ecosystem that began to come together, right, in terms of strengthening it. And now this is a formidable asset class, right? This is something which will power the future of the country. And I don't think there's anybody in today's world across globally who would not see the power of entrepreneurial ecosystem coming out of India. I think in some sense, a lot of things are the same. We're still interacting with the same community. We are a part of the same ecosystem. I still end up meeting a lot of entrepreneurs regularly on core events. But it has given us a vantage point to look at things a little bit from a distance. Look at things both from a quantitative standpoint as well as qualitative aspect. Today we see real metrics, real numbers. The work that we have done with CRISIL in terms of benchmarking all the top tier funds across the country. It's the first time ever in the country where you're seeing, the quartile performance of funds by the stage they're in. Earlier it used to be Cat 1, Cat 2 and so on, which was quite difficult and complicated to understand. But now you have a performance ranking for the venture capital guys, the growth guys, the private equity guys and so on. So it is now giving us a chance to be able to look at this whole industry from a very, very different lens standpoint. The data we are looking at is mind-boggling. Right? If you look at across these 200 funds, each fund having done maybe 2 to 3 series each, In each series, you have done about 25, 30, 40 companies. So the kind of insight that we have across the whole industry in terms of understanding how these companies are performing, to how the funds are performing, to how the series are performing, is a very, very different vantage point. With that, today, to not just look at the the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem as a whole, to actually segmenting it, to say how the supply chain index is doing, to understand how the healthcare index is doing, how the consumption side of the index is doing, how the deep tech segment is evolving. And that gives us a very different lens. So if you just take an example of something like deep tech, right? If we have 5 funds which are actively investing in it, 25 to 30, 40 companies each, right? That gives us a view of across 200 companies in the deep tech segment. Some of them are overlap, but still it gives us a tremendous amount of insight into not just the companies, the sectors, the themes, but the overall performance of the whole ecosystem. And I think that's what makes a huge difference.